The night the necklace surfaced, the world felt tilted, like something had been moved when no one was looking. Detective Maria Lane stared at the screen in a silent room where the hum of old computers made the air feel heavier than it should. Lily Harper's silver heart necklace sat on an eBay listing, lit by a cold flash that didn't match the seller's other photos. The clasp was bent the same way, Lily's mother once mentioned. A tiny flaw only family would notice. Maria felt her pulse jump as she enlarged the picture again, trying to understand why the background looked staged. Almost like someone had cleaned the scene before taking the shot. Somewhere in town, Hannah Harper was sleeping without knowing this image existed. And somewhere else, the person who posted it was watching the page, waiting. What were they hoping someone would notice? And what were they trying to hide? Maria drove straight to Hannah Harper's house without planning what to say. 6 months of silence had worn Hannah down, leaving her living inside a home that felt frozen in time. When Maria knocked, Hannah opened the door with a tired smile that held no real warmth, only habit. Maria explained the listing in simple words, watching Hannah's expression tighten, as if the air around her had turned colder. Hannah asked to see the photo, but her hands shook so much that Maria held the phone for her. For a long moment, Hannah stared at the necklace, then whispered that Lily never took it off. A small sound escaped her, something between a breath and a break. Maria realized there was no gentle way to move forward now. Someone in this town had kept this object hidden, waiting. But waiting for what? Evan Cooper answered the door of his small apartment as if he expected someone else. His eyes darted behind Maria before settling on the badge she held low at her side. The place smelled of old cardboard and dust, and he moved nervously through the clutter as she stepped inside. When she showed him the necklace listing, his face drained, and he kept repeating that he only posted what he was told to post. He wouldn't say by who. Maria watched his fingers tap anxiously against his leg, a rhythm of fear he couldn't control. The listing photo hung heavy between them, and something about Evan's reaction told her the necklace hadn't been meant to be found. Not yet. Someone had rushed a step. Someone had slipped. Back at the station, Maria spread all the photos across the evidence table, looking for anything she could anchor the case on. The necklace photo bothered her the most. The surface beneath it was too clean, too empty, as if someone had wiped away anything that could give away where it was taken. She enlarged the background again, this time spotting a faint shadow line that didn't belong, like the edge of a box or a wall just outside the frame. She made notes quickly, aware of how late it was getting, but some cases don't let you sleep. Her mind kept circling back to one question. If the necklace was taken from Lily on the day she vanished, why bring it back into the light now? Maria stepped outside for air, letting the station door close behind her with a dull echo. The night was quiet except for distant traffic and the soft buzz of the street lamp above. She looked down at the printed listing again, feeling the weight of it settle inside her like a cold stone. She knew the case had just shifted, as if someone had nudged a hidden piece into view. Someone wanted the necklace to be seen, maybe as a message, maybe as a mistake. Maria stood still, listening to the night breathe around her, and wondered if the person who posted the listing was watching for her reaction right now. In cases like this, people don't slip up unless there's something darker waiting behind the next door. Maria returned to the tech room before sunrise, determined to scrape every trace of the listing from eBay's backend. The silence made each click feel louder as she dug through seller history, cross-checking timestamps with Evan Cooper's movements. What she found didn't make sense. The necklace listing wasn't Evan's only odd post. Hidden among cheap electronics and thrift store scraps were 3 old jewelry pieces tied to girls who had disappeared from nearby towns years earlier. The pattern wasn't obvious unless you looked close, almost like the posts were planted in plain sight. Maria felt a chill tighten across her shoulders as she opened the oldest listing. Same lighting, same clean white surface, same careful hands behind the camera. Evan didn't look capable of this level of planning. Someone else was moving the pieces. someone who knew these girls. Maria drove to the thrift warehouse where Evan worked, its metal siding dull and lifeless under the overcast sky. She watched employees shuffle between loading docks, none of them paying much attention to her arrival. Inside, the building smelled of dust and a faint chemical cleaner that clung to the air. Evan spotted her instantly and froze like a cornered rabbit. She asked him directly who told him to upload the necklace, and he shook his head fast, refusing to speak the name. His fear wasn't normal. It was the kind that settles deep, the kind taught by threats that don't fade. When she pressed harder, he whispered that the listings weren't random. They were signals. Messages someone expected the right people to understand. Maria stepped back, realizing she wasn't dealing with a single fevered mind. She was stepping into a system. Back at her car, Maria typed the seller ID into a deeper database reserved for flagged online activity. The results loaded slowly, revealing a trail of shadow accounts linked through reused passwords and identical upload times. Someone had created a web of false sellers, each one posting a single item every few months, each one fading before detection. The newest link, however, led to a dark reselling community known for trading objects taken from crime scenes. Maria felt a knot tighten in her stomach. These people didn't care about money. They cared about trophies. She scanned listings that had long been removed from public view, and something cold settled in her chest. Whoever orchestrated this wasn't hiding. They were performing. Maria returned to Hannah Harper's home to share what she found. Hannah opened the door, slower this time, exhaustion weighing her down. When Maria explained the connection to other missing girls, Hannah's face went pale. She held onto the doorframe as if the news might knock her over. For a moment, she looked past Maria, lost in memories of Lily's last morning. She asked whether the necklace meant Lily was still alive. Maria hesitated. She couldn't promise what she didn't know. Hannah's eyes filled with a fragile hope that hurt to look at. Maria wished she had better answers, but truth is rarely comforting at this stage of a case. It only sharpens the fear. Back at the station, Maria gathered everything she uncovered and spread it across the evidence table. The lines connecting the girls, the items, the timing, all of it pointed to something bigger than Evan Cooper. She stared at the faint shadow in the necklace photo again. The same odd line in the background of the older listings. It wasn't a mark. It was a backdrop, one used by someone who wanted consistency. Someone meticulous, someone confident. As Maria traced the path again, she realized a pattern in the timestamps. Every upload happened within a narrow 2-hour window late at night. And every upload pinged from the same small region of town. Someone local? Someone close? Someone watching? Maria arrived at the thrift warehouse again, this time with a warrant and a feeling she couldn't shake. Like the truth was sitting just past her reach. The building groaned as she pushed through the heavy door. Workers glanced up, then quickly looked away, as if they didn't want to be caught staring. She moved toward the back of the warehouse where Evan had first frozen during their conversation. As she walked, she noticed how dust gathered unevenly along the floor, like something large had been dragged recently. The air grew colder the deeper she went, and the quiet felt unnatural. She kept replaying his trembling voice in her head. The listings are signals. Signals for who? And why here? Maria reached the far corner of the warehouse where the walls met in a narrow dead end. The dust on the floor was disturbed, forming a faint trail that led to a door partially hidden behind mismatched boxes. It was metal, old, and fitted with a heavy padlock that didn't match the rest of the warehouse's simple hardware. She crouched to examine it, noticing fresh scratches around the keyhole. Someone had opened this recently. When she called Evan over, he shook his head violently, stepping away like the door itself frightened him. His reaction told her everything. Whatever lay behind that lock wasn't a storage closet. It was something someone wanted buried. Inside the room, the air was colder, as if the space had been sealed long enough for the world outside to forget it existed. Shelves lined the walls, not with inventory, but with screens. Small, cheap cameras connected to tangled wires and a humming system in the corner. Maria stepped forward slowly, her pulse racing. On the table lay notebooks filled with dates, descriptions, and names she recognized from missing person databases. Her breath caught when she spotted Lily's name written with a shaky underline. Whoever kept this room had been watching girls long before Lily disappeared. This wasn't just a collector. It was someone who observed, selected, and recorded. Maria was photographing the evidence when the door behind her slammed open. Officer Mark Rudd stepped inside wearing a tight expression she didn't recognize. He acted annoyed, not surprised, which sent a chill through her. He said the room was old junk from a previous tenant and insisted she should focus on real leads instead of clutter. His tone wasn't casual. It was controlled. Too controlled. Maria watched his eyes move across the notebooks, lingering on certain pages, like he already knew what was inside. She told him the warrant covered everything. He smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. Something about his presence in that room felt wrong, like he belonged to the shadows lingering along the walls. After Rudd left, Maria stood alone, letting the silence settle back over the room. She felt the truth shifting beneath her feet, forming a shape she didn't yet understand. Someone had built this space piece by piece, night after night, collecting information no one should have. Someone with access, confidence, and the ability to move freely through town without raising suspicion. She scanned the walls again, noting the pattern in the camera placements, the notes written in the same narrow handwriting, and the timestamps in the logs. Whoever created this room didn't just watch the girls, they studied them. And Maria realized something even worse. The person who made this room didn't work from outside the case. They worked from inside the town. Maria stayed late at the station, replaying the camera logs from the hidden room. Most of the footage was static or darkness, but a few clips showed the same desk surface used in the necklace listing. Whoever filmed the photos had worked here, not in Evan's apartment. As she slowly scanned through timestamps, one entry froze her completely. It showed a figure signing into a restricted police database from the same IP address used to upload the necklace listing. The login belonged to someone inside law enforcement. Maria's breath grew shallow as she zoomed in, trying to identify anything in the grainy footage. The shadow moved with confidence, as if they never expected anyone to find this. Someone close. Someone protected. Someone who knew exactly how to hide. Maria traced the IP address deeper through internal logs, following a chain of masked entries that all seemed to loop back to the same source. The final trace revealed a buyer account connected to the necklace listing, someone who had tried to purchase Lily's necklace within minutes of it going live, and then again every 30 minutes for the next 2 hours. It wasn't desperation. It was monitoring. She checked the address tied to the buyer and felt her stomach twist. The location wasn't a random house. It was a familiar one, owned by someone respected in town, someone everyone trusted without question. She stared at the address, feeling the edges of the case shift again. The necklace wasn't bait. It was a signal to the buyer, a signal someone expected them to answer. Maria drove through quiet residential streets, the town asleep under dim streetlights. The address from the buyer account belonged to a modest brick home, with a tidy yard and a porch light that never flickered. It didn't match the darkness she saw in the listing patterns. She sat in her car, watching the windows for any movement. A shadow passed once, slow and familiar, though she couldn't place why. This wasn't a house belonging to a stranger or a drifter. This was someone who lived among them, who attended community events, who had the trust of families, maybe even Lily's. Maria felt a pressure in her chest as she realized the danger of accusing someone the whole town believed in, but the evidence didn't lie. Someone inside this home was tied to the trophies of missing girls. As Maria continued watching the house, her phone buzzed with a new notification from the seller network. Another item had just been posted, a charm bracelet belonging to a girl, missing for over a year. Maria's chest tightened as she opened the listing. Same background, same lighting, same shadow line. It appeared seconds earlier, time-stamped in real time. Whoever posted it wasn't hiding anymore. They were challenging her. She checked the IP address, and the result made her grip the steering wheel harder. The upload came from inside the same neighborhood she was sitting in, not blocks away, but steps away. Maria stepped out of her car slowly, her breath visible in the cold air. She checked the coordinates again, pacing until the little blue dot centered on her screen. She lifted her head and stared at the house directly across from her. The same place she had been watching for nearly an hour. Her pulse thudded in her ears as she realized the truth. The buyer and the uploader were connected, possibly the same person. Someone inside that house had been watching the listings, watching her, and sending out new signals even as she sat right here. She moved toward the porch, each step heavy with the sense that she was walking into something she could not fully see. And for the first time in months, she felt truly afraid. Maria stepped onto the porch with the feeling that every inch of the night was watching her. The house looked normal, too normal, like someone had gone out of their way to make it unremarkable. She knocked once. No answer. She knocked again, louder this time. A slow shuffling moved behind the door. When it opened, Officer Mark Rudd stood there, wearing the same polite smile he used during community events. But his eyes were colder than she had ever seen. Maria told him she needed to ask a few questions. He stepped aside with a gesture that felt rehearsed. Inside, the living room smelled of coffee and something metallic. As she crossed the doorway, a sinking truth settled in her gut. She wasn't just visiting a colleague. She was walking into the center of the pattern she'd been tracing for days. Rudd guided Maria into the living room, speaking casually as if nothing about this moment was strange. But the more she looked, the more wrong everything felt. On a shelf near the wall sat a row of items she recognized from case files. A blue ribbon belonging to a girl missing from a neighboring town. A keychain taken from another. Rudd saw her noticing and claimed the objects were found property waiting for return. The lie was too clean. Too quick. Maria stepped closer to the shelf, her heartbeat pounding. She knew now that these weren't misplaced belongings. They were trophies. Every piece carried a story no one wanted to imagine, kept neatly in the home of a man who had helped search for the girls himself. Rudd's expression hardened when Maria asked directly about the necklace listing. He insisted he had no idea what she meant, but his voice carried a tremor that cracked through the calm exterior head worn for years. Maria knew he was lying, but she couldn't quite understand how deep his involvement ran. She watched his hand tighten around the arm of his chair, his knuckles whitening. He wasn't afraid of being accused. He was afraid of what might happen next. She asked him why Evan Cooper seemed terrified of him. Rudd's jaw flexed, and for a moment, his mask slipped. He said Evan needed guidance, and that some people don't know how to stay quiet. Maria felt a chill creep through her. This was bigger than threats. This was control. Maria stepped toward the hallway, noticing a door that was slightly ajar. Rudd moved quickly to block her path, his tone suddenly sharp as he insisted there was nothing down there worth seeing. The shift in him was immediate, like a trap snapping shut. Maria informed him the investigation now involved his property, and she had every right to look. For a moment they stood in silence, the room thick with the tension of two people who knew exactly what the other was thinking. If she opened that door, everything would change. Rudd's hand hovered near his belt, not on his weapon, but close enough to send a warning. Maria met his stare without blinking. She wasn't leaving without answers. Maria finally forced her way past Rudd and pulled the door fully open. The stairs leading downward were narrow and steep, disappearing into darkness. A cold draft rose from below, carrying the faint smell of damp concrete. Rudd grabbed her arm, but she pulled free, keeping her voice firm as she ordered him to stand back. His eyes followed her with a look she hadn't seen before, fear, raw, and unmasked. She switched on the stairway light, and a single bulb flickered weakly over the walls. Carved into the wood near the railing were faint scratches, as if someone had clawed at the surface. Maria felt her pulse hammering as she stepped down the first step. This wasn't just another hidden room. This was something else, something worse. And Rudd's silence told her he knew exactly what she was about to find. Maria took each step slowly, her flashlight cutting a narrow beam through the basement darkness. The air grew colder as she descended, carrying a damp heaviness that made her skin crawl. Behind her, Rudd stayed at the top of the stairs, silent, his shadow stretching down the wall like something reaching for her. When she reached the bottom, her foot touched concrete that felt uneven, almost carved. She swept her flashlight across the room and froze. The basement wasn't empty. A long table sat against the far wall, covered in boxes, papers, and objects she recognized from old case reports, little belongings taken from girls who had vanished over the years. Maria felt her chest tighten, but she forced herself forward. Rudd didn't follow. He stayed above, breathing heavily as if the basement held something even he couldn't face. Maria stepped closer to the table, carefully lifting a small photo of a girl who vanished 3 years earlier. The edges were worn, as if someone had handled it again and again. Beside it lay a stack of printed screenshots from online listings, each one showing a different item on the same clean white surface. The pattern was unmistakable now. She turned toward the stairs and called out Rudd's name, demanding the truth. His voice echoed down to her, strained and unsteady. He admitted he had seen things, covered things, but insisted he never touched the girls. He said someone else ran the show, someone he owed, someone he feared. Maria felt the floor shift beneath her understanding. Rudd wasn't the architect. He was the guard. Maria climbed halfway up the stairs, her voice low but sharp as she pressed Rudd for answers. His breathing quickened, and he wiped sweat from his brow with a shaking hand. He spoke in fragments, admitting he'd been coerced for years, forced to clean scenes, to misfile reports, to guide investigations away from certain places. He claimed he never hurt the girls, only hid what he was told to hide. Maria didn't believe all of it, but something in his trembling eyes told her he was telling at least part of the truth. She asked him who controlled him. His jaw clenched. He whispered a name, barely audible, but enough to make Mariah's blood go cold. Someone she'd never suspected. Someone who had been close to the case from day one. Before Maria could press further, Rudd suddenly turned and bolted up the stairs. She chased after him, but by the time she reached the top, the front door was slamming open. Cold night air rushed into the house as Rudd ran across the yard and vanished into the line of trees behind his property. Maria followed without hesitation, her flashlight bouncing wildly as branches snapped under her boots. The woods swallowed the sound of her footsteps, replacing them with the rhythmic echo of Rudd's frantic breathing ahead. The darkness felt alive, closing in with every step. This was where Lily disappeared. This was where the path always led. Maria pushed harder, not willing to lose him. Not now. Rudd finally stumbled into a small clearing, collapsing near an old fallen tree. Maria approached cautiously, her flashlight steady on him as he wheezed for air. He looked smaller now, less like the confident officer she had known and more like a man crushed under secrets too heavy to carry. She knelt beside him and demanded the final truth. With shaking hands pressed into the dirt, he confessed that he had hidden evidence the night Lily disappeared, not because he was involved, but because he was protecting someone he thought he owed his life to, someone who had been watching Lily long before she vanished. Maria felt a cold dread spread through her as he whispered the last words. I wasn't covering up my crime. I was covering up theirs. Maria stood in the clearing long after Rudd's final words faded into the cold night air. She knew he was done running, but the real danger was still out there. Someone who watched from the dark, someone who had pulled strings for years. She contacted backup, then followed the direction Rudd pointed to before collapsing. A narrow path cut through the trees, barely visible, like it had been walked by only one person over time. As she pushed aside branches, the forest grew unnaturally quiet. Her flashlight beam skimmed across old footprints hardened in the dirt. She felt the weight of Lily's case settle onto her shoulders in a way it never had before. This wasn't just about a missing girl anymore. It was about the hunter who had been hiding in plain sight. The narrow path led her to a rocky slope, where the forest gave way to an old drainage tunnel, half hidden behind vines. The mouth of it yawned open like something waiting to swallow anyone brave enough to enter. Maria crouched and studied the ground. Recent scuff marks scraped across the concrete, along with a faint, muddy print that didn't belong to Rudd. She steadied her breath and stepped inside, the darkness swallowing the sound of her footsteps. The tunnel smelled of rust and damp earth. Far ahead, a faint glow flickered. Someone was down here. Someone who believed no one would ever follow. Maria tightened her grip on her flashlight. Every step echoed with the possibility that Lily had been here once. Maybe she still was. The tunnel opened into a small underground chamber that looked like it had been carved out slowly over years. A single lantern sat on the ground, flickering weakly and casting trembling shadows along the walls. On one side sat a wooden table covered in old notebooks, drawings, and printed photos of girls, some local, some from nearby counties. Maria's stomach twisted as she recognized the same handwriting from the hidden room in the warehouse. She flipped through pages filled with unsettling notes, tracking movements, habits, daily routines. Then she found a page with Lily's name alone at the top, underlined twice. Below it, a chilling line, still nearby. Maria swallowed hard. This wasn't just a bunker. It was the mind of someone who studied their victims like puzzles. Maria moved deeper into the bunker, her steps slow as she followed a narrow passage that branched off from the main chamber. A metal door stood at the end, scratched and dented, the lock broken from age or force. She couldn't tell which. Her flashlight beam slid across the floor and caught a small object lying near the wall. She knelt and picked it up. A silver charm shaped like a star. She recognized it instantly. It belonged to one of the other missing girls, whose bracelet had appeared online hours earlier. A chill ran through her. Whoever used this bunker didn't just take trophies. They stored them here, organized them, protected them. She looked at the metal door again, heart pounding, and slowly pushed it open. The smell of dust and time drifted out. Inside the final room, Maria found an old desk covered in handwritten journals, each one filled with the same unsettling mix of drawings, notes, and plans. The last journal lay open, its pages newer and cleaner than the others. She skimmed through, her breath tightening with each line. Dates matched Lily's timeline. Notes described her route home, her habits, the times she was alone. Then she reached the final page. It held just one sentence. She is not gone. She is waiting. A shiver ran through Maria as she stared at the words. The room felt colder, the quiet heavier. For the first time since the case began, hope and horror collided inside her. The last line wasn't a confession. It was a message, left for whoever dared to find this place. And Maria knew the investigation wasn't ending tonight. Well, it was only breaking open. So